The House Oversight Committee has issued subpoenas. So what exactly does that mean? I will say it again. I say it oftentimes on this channel. Testimony trumps client lists. Client lists. Good afternoon. You are watching Filibusted Live. I am Doug Smith, and we are going to talk about these subpoenas. Plus, stick around for a sneaky little fact that I uncovered that could potentially bolster this case and help put the final nail in the coffin. All right, let's get into this. A whole laundry list of prominent politicians have been officially subpoenaed to testify before Congress about the Jeffrey Epstein case. This just happened this morning. And while we were told something like this would eventually happen, the honest truth is that most never thought it really would happen. But here we are. It's actually happening. To be clear, just to set some definitions here, a subpoena to testify is not an implication of wrongdoing. So that's good to get out of the way right away. However, the walls are closing in, and we are going to talk about the how and the why on that. So first, let's talk about who's on the subpoena list. I pulled up a bunch of Wikipedia. I try to avoid Wikipedia because, for all good reasons, we always want to avoid Wikipedia. But in this case, it's appropriate because I'm just showing you who these people are, because I'm certain some people don't know exactly who the people are, okay? So we're going to go through the former general attorneys list first. First off, we got Merrick Garland, Obama-appointed judge who replaced Judge Scalia, and Biden-era attorney general too. And we're going to go through this list a little bit quickly. All right, and then next up, we got Bill Barr, who is a Bush and Trump-era AG. And then next up, we have Alberto Gonzalez. He was a Bush-era attorney general. My notes say AG, so forgive me if that's confusing. Bush-era attorney general serving, interestingly enough, and we'll find out why this is interesting later, from 2005 to 2007. This is when the Epstein crimes started getting exposed and investigated. Interesting to note. All right. And then next we have Jeff Sessions, who was Trump-era attorney general, the one Trump fired for, quote unquote, doing nothing, according to Trump. Those are his words, maybe paraphrased, but basically that's what he said. Next, we have Loretta Lynch, Obama-era attorney general, who replaced Eric Holder, who is also an Obama attorney general and also Obama's bestie, BFF, best friends for life. I don't know about for life anymore, though. I don't think they're very close anymore. But at the time, I'm sure they had bracelets that they made for each other. So former FBI directors. I didn't pull up the Wikipedia for these guys because they're pretty recognizable. I'm sure you'll know these names, these faces. James Comey and Robert Mueller. So here's just a general picture. No context needed, I guess, with them and Obama. And then lastly, the big ticket item on this list. Man, this is just getting crazy. We have the Clintons. And I lost my video on here. I don't know what it was before. Anyway, Bill and Hillary Clinton, former AGs and FBI director, subpoenaed for Jeffrey Epstein testimony. All right, so the Clintons are being subpoenaed specifically because, I'm quoting from this article, because of the former president's past ties to Epstein and Maxwell in the early 2000s. And these will likely lead, these subpoenas, this whole trial, not trial, sorry, bad word. It's not actually a trial. These investigations will likely lead to grand jury investigations. And I pulled up a little, where is it? One second. Here we go. There's the grand jury. Okay, so this means the intent behind the investigation is to determine whether or not there is probable cause to believe that one or more persons committed a certain federal offense. Okay, so it's not actually prosecuting any crimes. It's just trying to uncover whether or not they even exist in the first place. At this point, what we're seeing right now in this case is that it is a legislative process, which just means that it is gathering facts in order to refer the findings to the DOJ. So the big question is, I wanted to read this to you. While grand juries are sometimes described as performing accusatory and investigatory functions, the grand jury's principal function is to determine whether or not there is probable cause to believe that one or more persons committed a certain federal offense within the venue of the district court. So there you go. That's a good definition of what's happening right now and what the intent is behind, or what could potentially happen in the future. The legislative process isn't quite there yet. So yeah. The question I have for you guys is, why these names? What kind of testimony would they have? Many of these people were in prominent leadership positions during the timeframes relevant to the Epstein case. The FBI did raid Little St. James Island, which is Epstein's Island, in 2019 under the direction of FBI Director Christopher Wray, who, interestingly enough, I don't know if you noticed, was not in the subpoena list. Fun fact. Okay. However, the FBI, while under different leadership, did investigate Epstein over the years, over those relevant years. These investigations have led to plea deals, which is just another fun name for hand slaps. This was started during the time frame under Alberto Gonzalez as Attorney General. Remember the 2005 to 2007, a little bit dipped into 2008-ish. That's when where the hand slaps were handed out, and Epstein just kind of took a couple, like, okay, yeah, I guess I did some bad things, and I'll spend 18 months in jail for it. And then that was that, and they moved on, and the story unfolded from there. As for the other attorney generals, attorney generals, they were all in those positions for the duration of the Epstein investigations from the early 2000s until recently, and as such would have information from the DOJ as to how the case was handled. The deposition seeks to achieve clarity on what exactly went down with the DOJ during the time frame, particularly in regard to Epstein's non-prosecution agreement, which is what he achieved during the time frame where he had these hand slaps. They agreed not to prosecute him. Crazy. Not only are their names, but the DOJ itself has been, in a sense, subpoenaed. This is the subpoena right here. I found the PDF for it. So this is like here's the first page: subpoena by authority of the House of Representatives of the Congress of the United States of America. You are hereby, from Pam Bondi, right? You are hereby commanded to be and appear before the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Wow, this is kind of interesting. But this is specifically to the DOJ in a way, because it is for something entirely different. This is in addition to all the people who have to testify. The information from all of the Epstein cases that happened up to this point is now being released. Well, not this moment, but this is part of the subpoena. It's coming down the pipeline. It is almost here. So I'm going to go through these numbers real quick, because this is crazy what they are saying has to be released to the public. All documents and communications relating or referring to Mr. Jeffrey Epstein or Miss Ghislaine Maxwell, and further relating or referring to human trafficking, exploitation of minors, abuse, or related activity. All documents and communications contained within the case file regarding United States versus Jeffrey Epstein. All documents and communications contained within the case file regarding United States versus Ghislaine Maxwell. All documents and communications contained within the file pertaining to the investigation of Mr. Jeffrey Epstein by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida that resulted in the 2007 non-prosecution agreement between the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida and Mr. Epstein. All documents and communications relating or referring to the United States versus Jeffrey Epstein, United States versus Ghislaine Maxwell, and the investigation of Mr. Jeffrey Epstein that resulted in the 2007 non-prosecution agreement between the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida and Mr. Epstein. All documents and communications between the executive... Are you catching a trend here? All documents and communications between the Executive Office of the President, including the Executive Office of President Joseph R. Biden Jr. and the Department of Justice relating or referring to the United States versus Jeffrey Epstein versus Ghislaine Maxwell and the investigation of Epstein that resulted in the 2007 non-prosecution agreement. So they basically are getting you all the documents related to... This sounds like everything. I can't think of what else would be related to this other than indirect documents or cases. This is everything directly related to Epstein. It's coming out. This is supposed to come out by August 19th. That is the mandatory date on this subpoena. Okay, so how does this work? Each subpoena is separate and confidential. The hearings will take place one at a time throughout the next few months. Clearly, saving the best for last, here's a post from Rep. James Comer, who is the one he is the head chair of the Oversight Committee, and he put out this list on X. Here are the dates and the names next to them. This is when these people are going to be in court testifying before Congress, everything that they know about Epstein. And this is mandatory, by the way. They have to be there. If they are not there, there will be consequences for them not showing up. Honestly, I don't know exactly what those consequences are. That part is kind of vague, a little bit of gray area. So we're going to see whether or not they show up. I do believe they will. But Bill Clinton is the last one on October 14th, and it'll start wrapping up from there. All right, so these hearings will likely be held in private, unfortunately. They are generally referred to as closed depositions. It is possible that the testimonies will be released to the public at a later time, but only after the deposition is concluded. Even if criminal activity is revealed within the hearings, no criminal charges can be brought at the time of these depositions by Congress. If it does happen, if there are criminal exposure of whatever kinds, if they admit to some sort of crime, somebody admits to something, or somebody proves that a crime happened in whatever ways, then that will go to the DOJ. So the House Oversight Committee will hand the case over to the DOJ, where they will then investigate using that potentially newfound evidence and information in order to properly investigate the supposed crime that happened. Or I say supposed, but you have to say those kinds of terms when it comes to this because it's not proven yet, innocent until proven guilty, all that stuff, right? This would open up a new grand jury case where the criminal prosecution could take place, which is what we talked about earlier. Remember, legislation versus the grand jury, they're two different things. We're in the legislative right now, not in the grand jury yet, but we could be getting to the grand jury, and this is the first big step. We couldn't get to the grand jury without doing this first, so this is very important. On the surface, though, this could potentially seem like it's just a charade if you're not really digging deep. So if this is all just one big nothing burger, then why do we care? I'm going to posit an argument for you. It's building a case, right? Remember, the whole criminal enterprise has been thriving for decades, and it's not just about Epstein. In order to properly establish justice in this case, it will take time. Lawyers are fantastic at poking holes in clearly proven cases. They can tear anything apart, even if it's clear what happened. They can still prove it, quote unquote, in their own way that it didn't, or whatever it is they want to prove. They're really good at that. That's why they pay them the big bucks, right? The law is particular. It is not necessarily fair all the time. Sometimes it is. Hopefully, most of the time it is, but not always. And I think we can all agree to that. In the history of law, we have seen many, many times where the law did not work out justice, right? Loopholes abound, and you can be sure they will find them. What you cannot disqualify is a barrage of perfectly corroborating testimonies under oath. That is massive. That's why this is one at a time. Will they lie? Perhaps, but will they all lie in unison is the question at that point. They have had years to practice, so there is that. But of course, they may also tell the truth, whatever that truth is. Now, combine this with the, for some reason, still mostly unsealed Virginia Giuffre testimony, the pending Maxwell testimony, and a handful of other withheld testimonies, and you have a case that could actually do something. Will these come out under the DOJ subpoena? That would surely be something. I would like to think that they will. Speaking of testimonies, here is the little interesting tidbit that I teased earlier. You don't see this mentioned too often, but I found this tucked away in a little Newsweek article from late July. Do I have that pulled up still? No, I don't. I'm sorry, guys. I forgot to pull this actual article up, but I got the direct quote from the article right here. It says, meanwhile, the Trump DOJ is also pushing for the release of testimony from secret grand jury proceedings, referring to the stuff that happened in the early 2000s, mid 20 tens. I don't know what you call that. One is 2010 through 2020. Okay, anyway, continuing on. Although that effort is unlikely to yield significant new revelations, this is according to mainstream media, right? A U.S. district judge in Florida denied a request from the Trump administration to unseal grand jury transcripts related to the Epstein case, the New York Times reported Wednesday. So they're just saying, poo poo, nothing to see here. There's a bunch of testimonies that we already have in hand, but most likely there's nothing there. So let's move on and pretend like that never happened. So you mean to tell me that all along the Trump DOJ has been trying to get secret testimonies from 2005 to 2007 unveiled, and a judge in Florida plus a few in New York basically said no, where, by the way, a lot of these crimes happened because that's where Epstein had estates. Where's the outrage there? I haven't seen any outrage on that front. Have you guys seen any outrage on that front? I don't recall seeing it. Maybe it's there. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm not paying enough attention to X. I try not to be honest. Mainstream media is claiming that these secret testimonies won't provide any additional insight. So why not release them if it's not a big deal? If it's no big deal, just, throw them out there. Let's see what they say. Let's see what these secret testimonies have in them, right? This is where the rug pull is. All this time, the woke left and the woke right, which is a fun new term, has been screaming about the Epstein client list, often referring to the little black book, and all the while having no idea what the actual list is. The list is not a simple bullet point outline of who did what, when, and where. The only list anyone is going to get will be verifiable, corroborated names dropped within testimonies, both party to crimes and those who investigated such crimes. Despite that fact that it is proven that Epstein trafficked and prostituted underage victims at his private island, it is also a proven fact that Bill Clinton and others visited this island with Epstein a number of times. The reality is that you can't just lock someone up because their name is on a flight log, which sounds like an unfortunate thing, but at the same time, we have to have due process. In all fairness, there were some people who were screaming about releasing all Epstein files, which is what's now happening. And probably part of that demand is responsible for what's happening now, though I have a feeling this was rolling long before they started screaming about it. I also have a feeling that it'll be more about the victims' testimonies within those files, should we get them, than it will be about the detailed lists and logs that everybody says Epstein kept, which I'm sure he did keep, but they unfortunately, they don't prove anything. And that all combined with the new testimonies coming down the pipeline from the subpoenas to the court, to the oversight committee, will hopefully land us at some sort of conclusion, and let's just all hope justice, right? And at the end of all of this, there's a little bit of a plot twist. I can't help but think that somehow this is all going to connect to Russiagate or vice versa. One way or the other, these two they go hand in hand, because if you look at all of the people implicated in Russiagate, then you notice that they're all the same people who just got subpoenaed for Epstein. That's interesting. These people all had something to do with it too. Let's just see what they had to do with Russiagate. And I'm kind of shocked that actually Obama wasn't on the subpoena list, but I guess you can take what you can get, right? Anyway, I am glad to see some of this is actually starting to happen, and it's once again one step at a time. It's the whole saying you can't eat an elephant all in one bite. You have to take one bite at a time, and this is a big, ugly elephant. So I think that something's going to happen. And I was going to point out too, one of the biggest things that flagged for me when I was looking at the subpoena list, the people in that name, was Robert Mueller. And that's what I was like, he's kind of more involved with the fake Russia thing. So that will be really interesting to see how he ties into this, because by the time Mueller came around, if I remember right, he wasn't there wasn't as much Epstein stuff going on. A lot of that had kind of settled down. So that'll be interesting. But he did have access to all of that information, and he does know something. So we're going to wait and see exactly what that all looks like. So that's the story for today. I wish I had more for you. I wish I could be like, yes, they're all going down. But so far, it's just this big first step, and it's a really important step. So at least there's that. We could be chilling with somebody else as president and having none of this at all. So let's keep that in mind. All right, guys. That's all I got for you today. So I will see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Troy is on vacation this week, so I'm covering for him today and also doing my regular tomorrow. So it'll be me again. So hopefully you enjoyed this and hopefully you learned something from it. And we'll see you then.